Hi, this is Yvonne Galusha, instructor for the VBA class. This first little video is just going to give an introduction on briefly Excel and then how to get Excel set up in order to perform VBA macros. And VBA, by the way, stands for Visual Basic for Applications. And we can write those macros in other Office applications besides Excel, but this class will be focusing on Excel, and that does happen to be the most prominent application where VBA is used. So I'm sure this is a reminder. I have Microsoft Excel open here, but just to review a few basics. Excel is an application used for crunching numbers, a spreadsheet type application, and it is organized three-dimensionally. Starting out, you save a file as a workbook, but then the file can have multiple worksheets. So you see here I just can add another worksheet, and by doing so you in essence get 3 dimensions because a single worksheet is already organized in 2 dimensions with each cell being referenced by a column and row notation. So when we write macros, we are dealing with ranges. So a single range actually could be a cell with just a number in it, or even a text value like somebody's name. Or a range may be multiple cells where we have multiple numbers, and using the fill down handle we can set up a group here, and the whole area I have highlighted is considered a range. A range does not have to be consecutive. A range could be like this, and it's considered a non-contiguous range. So just be familiar with those basic concepts. You will need to understand that as you write your macros. So in order to write macros, something that's very handy is to have the developer tab enabled. And right now you'll see I do not have it enabled, and very likely the computer you will be using will not have it enabled. So that is a primary focus of this video, is how do you get that enabled. It's not too difficult. We are going to click File and then Options, and then underneath Customize Ribbon. And you'll see then over here on the right hand side you need to check Developer and then say OK. And you see when I did that, we now have this Developer tab, and we'll get more into this, but you'll use that as you develop macros. So the next thing that we want to do is make sure that we can run macros. Macros are considered a security risk because sometimes hackers will write basically unsecured code or attempts to thwart, and they write it as a macro. You open an Office document and then you end up executing that macro, and it can cause havoc. So it's a good idea to make it where you personally say it's okay to run a macro because you know the macro's there and you want to run it. So let's talk about that next. File, again, Options, but this time we're going to go to Trust Center. And then under Trust Center we need to go to Trust Center Settings, and here we want to go to Macro Settings. Well, let's go to Trusted Locations first. So Trusted Locations, right here we want to say Allow Trusted Locations on my network. This is because most likely you'll be saving some code on your H drive, and so you'll want to be able to execute across the network. So I'm going to demonstrate that next. I'm going to demonstrate how to add that. It's not very difficult. add a new location. Now, my H drive is actually referenced as Z on this computer, so don't let that throw you. If I just go to the computer, now this still is my H drive. It's just Z : is how it's mapped. Yours is standardly mapped as H. And then here's my Hawk ID Y Galusha. Well, I'm navigating down to the folder for the VBA class. And here it is. So I select that folder and say OK. And now I also want to allow any subfolders in that location, and all of these are trusted. So now I say OK, and you can see how that got added here. So I'll just review. Before you can do this browsing to your H drive, you need to be sure you say allow trusted locations on my network. So once that's done, you can say OK, and that completed the first step, making sure you trust your H drive. Now back more to the security settings. Again, we go to Trust Center, and then we want to go under macro settings, where I started to go first. And you want to be sure this disable all macros with notification. So what that means is it's going to notify you that a macro is within a file when you open it, and you can choose to enable it. This is just a good policy so that you don't end up having some harm done. And the other thing while you're here is go ahead and say trust access to the VBA project object model. We will talk more about that later, but for now we're just trying to get Excel set up so you are ready to actually start developing your macros. So okay, go ahead and say okay. And that concludes this first video on getting Excel set up. Thank you.